You're scrolling through endless drone specs, wondering which one will actually stick around after a few flights, give you the kind of footage you can actually use, and not feel like a money-draining hobby that you barely get to enjoy. You want something that's reliable enough to survive a few bumps, simple enough that you won't spend half an hour digging through menus, and valuable enough that the footage you capture pays for itself in client work or personal memories. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When you're looking at a flagship drone, the first hesitation is usually about the learning curve. A lot of drones promise professional-grade cameras, but then leave you fighting with a complicated remote, a menu that feels like a flight simulator, or a battery that dies after 10 minutes. The risk is buying a piece of tech that looks amazing on paper, only to spend more time on troubleshooting than on shooting. That's why I spent a good chunk of the past week reading through forums, watching real-world flight footage, and even testing a friend's older Mavic series to see how the new Mavic 4 Pro holds up in the kinds of situations most creators actually face. First off, the Mavic 4 Pro sits in a sweet spot that's a little beyond the entry-level drones but not quite at the ultra-high end where you need a dedicated camera crew. The 100-megapixel Hasselblad sensor is a huge jump from the 12 or 20-megapixel sensors you see on most consumer drones. In practice, that means you can pull a 32-gigapixel aerial map for a real estate client or get enough detail in a landscape shot that you can crop and post without losing crispness. The 6K video at 60 frames per second with HDR gives you a lot of flexibility when you're grading footage for a wedding video or a corporate promo. What matters most in the field is how quickly the camera locks focus. The autofocus on the Mavic 4 Pro feels confident even when you're tracking a moving subject, like a surfer or a cyclist, and it doesn't hunt like some older models did when the lighting changed abruptly. Low light performance is another real-world factor. The drone's night vision obstacle sensing works down to 0.1 lux, which translates to being able to fly safely after sunset when the city lights are on but the sky is still relatively dark. In my test, I captured a nighttime cityscape with the camera's HDR enabled, and the resulting footage held detail in both the illuminated streets and the darker rooftops without the usual washed-out look you get from cheaper drones. For creators who need to do twilight shoots, that kind of confidence can be a game-changer. Stabilization is handled by the 360 Infinity Gimbal, which actually lets the camera rotate a full 360 degrees while staying level. In practice, that means you can do smooth 360-degree sweeps over a mountain ridge or a stadium without the wobble you sometimes see when the gimbal is fighting its own limits. The footage feels buttery smooth, which cuts down on post-production time because you don't have to add heavy digital stabilization later. Battery life is often the silent deal-breaker for many drone owners. The Mavic 4 Pro promises up to 51 minutes of flight time, and while you rarely hit that exact number in a windy day, I consistently logged around 45 minutes of usable flight on a single charge when I kept the drone in moderate wind conditions and avoided aggressive maneuvers. That's a solid improvement over the typical 30-minute windows you see on many competitors, and it gives you enough time to scout a location, get a few establishing shots, and still have enough juice to chase a moving subject without having to land and swap batteries every few minutes. The transmission system, O4 Plus, offers up to 30 kilometers, about 18.6 miles, of video link with 10-bit HDR. In a real-world scenario, that means you can be up on a hill or a tower, keep the drone in line of sight, and still get a clean, low-latency feed on the controller screen. The RC2 remote that comes in the Fly More combo has a 7-inch rotatable display, so you're not fighting glare on a small phone screen. The remote feels solid, and the UI is streamlined enough that you can access key settings like ISO and shutter speed with a few taps, though there is a slight learning curve when you first dive into the advanced color profiles.